Podcasting 101. If that's what you came for, this is what you're getting. If not, okay. But to pretty much break it down, you know, like Seth Godin said, this is the moment right here and right now for you to start a podcast. So, with like we said, everybody's basically doing a podcast, on pretty much various topics. So, it's more so, really dealing with if you have a topic specifically that you want to chime in on, or if you just kind of really want to, just talk. So, to break it down, what is a podcast? It's pretty much an episodic series of spoken words that's created into digital audio files. And pretty much you could kind of push them through all the various streaming platforms and such. So, in my opinion, I kind of sum it up into two things. It's pretty much people talking and people listening. So, you're going to have your host and you have your guests and then you have the audience. So, to kind of pretty much sum up why put out a podcast, I mean, like you said, if you have a voice, you could actually let your voice be heard. You can engage your audience. There's so many opportunities as far as like just dealing with advertisement and sponsorships. That's pretty much like the bulk of, the bulk of the podcast. It's kind of like radio as far as like they're driven off of advertising. So podcasts are pretty much driven off of advertisement, and sponsorship. So it allows you to connect directly with your followers. I don't know if you all have like a huge like social media following and stuff like that, but like you could, align yourself directly with your following and like talk directly to them through like a podcast. And it's definitely, you know, a way to grow your following. And if you're a subject matter expert, you could basically do podcasts on generally anything that, like if you're great with marketing, or if you're great with music, or if you're great with, typically any subject as far as like say your job, because like we're in COVID right now, so like most people aren't really working, but the reality is like they somewhat could, create a podcast off of say your job. Like say you were a chef, you know, like you could basically like make a podcast about cooking, and pretty much just kind of, just do that, you know. Like I said, it helps you grow your subscribers, but generally the number one resource that most people have popping as far as like a podcast is kind of dealing with news and more current events, and those are the ones that obviously take the most of the as far as like the fund, and they get the most advertising dollars. So the purpose of a podcast is kind of to have a recording of a specific topic. Like you said, it could be business, it could be travel, it could be sports, it could be comedy. It could be like on a specific music. I think Taraji is doing like one on like New Jack Swing, which is like pre hip hop of like the 90s. So like when you kind of just deal with all these different things, like you could make a podcast over like various topics and then just kind of tap straight into that demographic, because it's kind of like niche marketing. So if like you solely want to just I'm in the studio, so say you want to do it about drum machines or like bass guitars or something like that, so you could just solely reach out to people within like the bass community or something like that. But and then, to kind of piggyback off of that, I feel sharing is caring. It might sound kind of, funny and lame in a sense, but the reality is if you have something to share, it'll actually connect you with others, who are obviously like-minded, or it might connect you with trolls too, but you need those as well. So at the end of the day, it'll clarify your thinking, and it also enhance the subject matter that you're pushing, and the reality is with technology advancements, your reach is pretty much is global. Like I put massive, but it's pretty much global. Like, like you could get people from all different parts of the world or country, or, you're not just really focused, on one specific, I won't say demographic, but you won't just be in one town. And then, like, with social media, it's created everyone as brand ambassadors. So once you start getting like your friends to like your stuff, they'll basically start sharing it. And then, that's pretty much where we at right now. Like, everybody is a brand ambassador and doesn't know it. I'm gonna end up being a brand ambassador for somebody towards the end of this uh, webinar, and they're not paying me, but I mean that's kind of what it is. But excuse me, when you think about the genre content and the industries that are involved in podcasts, like I won't kind of name them all, but when you just think of the genres of, when you think of the content, like arts, it's arts podcast. It might be something talking about, just all of arts. Like film, from like just every aspect of it, all creatives. Dealing with more business. Small businesses. Like I forget her name, but she was talking about women empowerment. So just even on that aspect of it, and dealing with government history. Like they got the true crime stuff. Like it's podcast talking about like the mafia and stuff. So like you could pretty much chime in on like any of these various categories, but the whole gist of it is they're also aligned with specific industries that are, trying to advertise to the listeners. And that's pretty much it. Just really dealing with advertising and like with podcasts that are usually free. When the product is usually free, then you are usually going to end up being the product because they're trying to, end up trying to sell something to you. So, once you have all these various people interested in like mob talk and stuff like that, you could specifically target them with, they're basically like retargeting marketing. And yeah, to kind of break it down, when it comes to the podcast, like I said, the various formats, most people are kind of used to the basic monologue format where it's just, one voice. Like you said, it's just pretty much easy to produce, depend on the story and the personality. And, it's really more of a hit or miss, because at the end of the day, it could become a vanity project because if, say the people aren't interested in the topic that they're talking about. So, it's kind of just, you kind of got to find your niche. But most of the stuff that we hear is specifically like monologue, you know. Then obviously dialogue when it's more, two or more people. And then it's kind of hard to, like I said, the monologue, you could do that by yourself, like with your phone. But once you have two people, you're going to need obviously multiple microphones. And this is going to, create instances where there's going to be more noise. That's why I have on these headphones, because if I cut it up, you'll be able to hear all the room noise in the background. So I mean, it's really just more kind of dealing with the production. I think that's kind of what Escadar, I think that's what how you pronounce it. I think that's probably what you might be running into, just really kind of trying to find a way to edit the noise out and just kind of you know,
Yeah.
filter out, you know, the bad sound. And, just really kind of going back into other forms, like you have magazine, which is kind of, I would say it's kind of like news, to where it's like you're doing more of like a collage of like multiple pieces and kind of like talking over them. If like say you were just like looking at YouTube videos and like talking about them or something like that. But it's also gonna, arise issues to whereas you have to deal with the editing and, like really format it to get it the way you really want it. That's really where problems arise for people because it's like when you have a lot of background noise and a bunch of, you know, different tracks from various sources, you kind of have to manage it, or like it says, it's gonna become a disorganized mess. And if you're not, as far as like organized or savvy, as far as like keeping up with like audio files and knowing how to balance it or even mix it to be like, oh, this, this sound effects clip is way too louder than my voice, so now when, what I'm saying, people listening to it, it turned them off because it's like, so at the end of the day, like, magazine is kind of hard, but you got to step the production up. That's what I feel. And then obviously montage. Magazine is kind of news ish, and montage is kind of news ish, but it's more like narrative based. To where it's like it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. Like I said, like they have the mob stories, and stuff like that. Things that you would probably watch a documentary on. Like they would basically make uh, a physical, you know, they would basically make a podcast about it and just sit and talk about the stories, or even find some of the people, that were existed in the time when whatever they talking about went on. But like it says, it could definitely become a budget killer because obviously you have to pay for production. Then if you have to hire talent, as far as like trying to recruit people, and then if you're trying to get people who were like doing stuff like 20, 30 years ago, they might not be relevant now. So they might not just be trying to like show up and talk about this stuff for free, unless they trying to just get their point across. So yeah, montage. I mean, it's cool, but it's really just all what you're really trying to do with it, you know. And then really, this is I guess what you would call the titling. Somebody I gotta mute. I'm hearing my. You can mute whoever that is. All right, thank you. So the episodic series is more so just really how they're broken down, like when you're viewing them. So when you kind of look at it, it'll kind of just say specifically like, oh, such and such is on this show. And then such and such is on this show. Such and such is on this show. And this is more just like marketing and just really thinking along the terms of how do you want to present it. Because it's like, if you're going to have like seasons, are you just going to do shows forever? Like I'm on show 1,052. You know what I'm saying? Like you kind of want to break it down so you could kind of package it more on a marketing and an intellectual property type aspect, to whereas you could like really push it to where it's like people will be like, oh yeah, this is season one, or season two. And then like the episodic series with seasons is like I said, the same thing, where it'll be like season one episode 12, season four episode three, and then like kind of dealing with the serial series. Rather, it's kind of just doing pretty much the same thing as far as like having your seasons based out, but you're having more of a reference. That's like if say you watching Power and like they killed 50 Cent in season five or something. I don't remember, and that's how people are like season six, and then you could kind of you could grow with your show, as well as you could market it and have, as well as like an off season, as they say, you know and then you always want to think of the listener. Who is the audience that you're trying to like market this show to, or who is the audience that you want to be listening to it, and what is the end goal? Like, are you trying to get, excuse me, are you trying to get like advertisers? Are you trying to get sponsorship, or are you just trying to get a following and get people to like listen to you? Excuse me, like with all the stuff going on, like you know, you have a voice, and like I said, with just dropping a podcast and like knowing the possibilities as far as like the connections and resources that you can make just from doing a nice show. You could reach out to a broad audience, just through technology. So, which kind of brings us to the streaming wars. Like I said, most of the most it look a little blurry, but I would say Spotify is kind of holding it down. You know, they have as far as this pod, this is from 2019, but as far as like they have like 35% of the market share. You know, Apple Music is behind them with 19%, and Amazon has 15%. So Spotify is pretty much solidified when it comes to it, and kind of like what I'm going to end up getting to a little later. You know, right now it kind of seems like Apple Music or iTunes versus Spotify. Like I heard some chitter chatter about Apple Music supposed to be allegedly trying to buy Title, but I mean that was just might have just been gossip, but they have to do something to try to. I mean, they don't have to, but you know, you never know. Like Spotify, they'll buy Apple Music type. But just to kind of break it down, like Spotify pretty much has like almost 300 million monthly listeners. So if you're trying to put out a podcast, like this would obviously be one of the platforms that you would, tap into because, like I said, they have 300 million monthly listeners. And it's like Facebook. I forget how many billion users they have, but you could Google it, but the reality is, when it comes to podcasting, the advertising is kind of really where it's at, and they're kind of like foreseeing, what was going on. Like I won't really get into all the numbers, but you could see it. And like I said, I'll share the slides with you all if you want as well to kind of break it down. But this is pretty much just like some little industry stuff as far as like what was going on, as far as like with the advertising revenue. Like they lost, you know, well they actually gained, but I'm saying like dealing with COVID, like it kind of like, you know, it kind of like really messed with their projections, but not bad, but they still, you know, came up. And when it comes to the content genre, basically the content genre for the advertisers, the main content genre that's killing, obviously, you see is news, you know, which they're holding it down. Obviously, you know why? Because the news. But at the end of the day, like, if you look all the way down at the bottom, all the way at the bottom, you see music at 1%, and you see TV and film at 2%. Like, why is that? Like that don't make no sense. And I kind of hate that. But at the end of the day, like, it seems like something that people that are in music would be monopolizing off of. Like, so it's just something to think about. And then it kind of just leads us to this. Like, I don't know if you all know who Joe Rogan is. His people said something in the chat. I kind of don't be looking in it. I seen you, bro. I seen you pop in. I ain't want to stop. but but yeah, I'm not sure if you all know who Joe Rogan is, but definitely Google him if you haven't. He's worth a Google, as one of my teachers said. Like, he pretty much got a multi-year $100 million deal, to pretty much license his content to Spotify, which is like unheard of, because like you don't even hear rappers getting $100 million. So I'm just saying, like, they paying him, and obviously he's a comedian. He's been around, but still, I'm just saying. Just picture if you can get 1% of the 100 million. That's only a million, but still, you just talking like how I'm talking. So I'm just saying. But you could look into him. I mean, let's see. I kind of go through it. Like, he pretty much struck the deal with them, and it kind of he's basically licensing his stuff to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, he basically has 9.5 million followers, and he last September he moved all of his he didn't move it all, but he pretty much switched his content to Spotify, because Spotify is investing a lot of money into podcasts, as far as like the production and really like, you know, trying to monopolize on podcasts because like they said they already have music and they're already functioning as a streaming service, and in order to scale up they could corner another area of the market, which is getting Joe Rogan, which he has a huge following. And like I said, they gave him 100 million. He wasn't like they tried to like, get him to sign to them before, but he wasn't going because they weren't trying to, offer him enough money. And like I said, it's just a licensing deal, you know, and it's still just some stuff breaking it down. But like I said, uh, he's just licensing the music, but it's one of the largest like deals in the podcast business because I mean it just happened, and it's basically taken from what was like a like a video. They call it a vodcast. Like it's taking that format, which a lot of people use. You basically take the video and then you extract the audio and put it on the audio platforms. And yeah, like that's pretty much how you do it. You give people the visual as well as you have the podcast on these streaming networks. So yeah. So I guess the part that y'all really would want to know, what is needed to pretty much get started. Like this is, I would say, the bulk of everything, And I mean, it's really only, it depends on what you want. Cause I like getting a lot of stuff, but you don't need, all of this stuff. So to kind of break it down, you really only need two things. Like, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, but you could get by with it, with the phone and an Anchor account, which I'll get into, in a few. But just to start with your phone, because your phone has a microphone on it, and you could, like record straight directly into it, and through the Anchor account, you could basically upload all of your music. I mean, not your music, but your audio files of you talking into Anchor, and it has editing capabilities where it'll, make your music. I keep saying music because I do music, but it'll make your podcast sound official. Like you could eliminate background noise, and you don't really need to understand what background noise is or even understand how to be an audio engineer. Like you could pretty much stream music from Spotify, import that. They'll give you like royalty free, music that you could put like right in the back, and you could do this all directly from your phone, you know, and the app. I'll get into that in a few. But if you don't want to go that route, and you might notice the picture, you know, kind of, that would kind of be ideally what you would need to essentially get started. Pretty much a microphone or two, depending on if you want to have guests. If you're just going to do it by yourself, you would only need one microphone. But obviously, you're going to eventually want to have somebody else on the show, if you want the show to grow, you know. But you get a microphone, obviously a computer, to kind of, edit and do, other stuff. A mixer or audio interface, or both. If you're kind of on a slim budget, I would just recommend getting, the mixer, the microphone, and the computer, you know. And obviously the headphones. With some of the mixers that they have out now, I could definitely, if you are, because I kind of come from I'm coming from an audio background. So if you need to, find out about equipment that's like cost effective that, you know, like could get the job done, I could point you in the right direction. I just would need to know your budget. Like I really know that like dealing with microphones, that's a whole another story. Like I could talk about, dynamic microphones versus ribbon microphones versus condenser microphones, but all of that stuff is for what you all would need, like I said, you could do it from your phone, or you could get something simple like this. This one isn't cheap, but it's a cheaper dynamic microphone, which is kind of like if you go to a concert, or when you could go to a concert, you would see somebody on stage with one of these type of microphones. Or if you want like something that where the volume will be better, you obviously could get a better microphone. Like when you look at like the radio show, like say the Breakfast Club or something, like the mics that they have, like those are they're pretty pricey depending on what you're talking about. But yeah, but not to go off into that, but to finish up, you would just need more headphones, you know, if you cuz obviously you don't want the sound traveling back. That's really what's going to create the noise. Like when people come in and they're not muted, and then once my voice feeds back, that's what's kind of coming back in. So when you have the headphones, that'll kind of eliminate that problem. You know, a DAW, which is a digital audio workstation. Like I said, all these things are optional, but I just want you to know, and if you kind of want whatever it is, the podcast that you're trying to create to sound better, like these are the things that you would need. And like I said, if you tell me you got $300 and I could, basically tell you what you would need to, what you could get for the $300, you know. And like I said, studio monitors, that's just kind of more for reference for listening back, because obviously you don't want to keep doing it in headphones to listen back for people to listen on other systems, and then you would just need the microphone cables and stands, or a boom arm, which is what the the things connected to the mic on the picture are, you know. So I would say uh the last thing, I think this is the last thing, Anchor, like this was the when I said I'm gonna actually be a brand ambassador for somebody. Like I don't know if you all are using them, if you're heard of them, but if you're definitely trying to release a podcast, I would 100% recommend using Anchor, because, like I said, they'll do it for free. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. And it's everything you need all in one. It's in the app. And like I said, it's available for Apple as well as, Google Play. So if you have an Android, or, whatever type of device you have, iPad or tablet, yeah, but they're all in one platform where you could pretty much do everything that you need to do all in one, as far as like create, distribute, and monetize your podcast from any device, and it also stores everything on there. So it's just right there, you know. Uh, it's 100% free as far as like the hosting and the distribution. You don't pay anything, as well as you could get paid to actually podcast. I don't know how they're making money. I mean, I'm quite sure they're making money because they have the content, but I don't know. Like they get your content on I won't say every site, but I'll show you. I have one of the podcasts that I did a while back, and it was on like I believe 8 platforms. But like I said, you'll pretty much be able to look at straightforward analytics, and you'll be able to add music to it. And you don't need to like know what 60 dB, you don't need to know what 60 hertz, or take out 6 dB of 60 hertz, or bring the mid range. You don't need to know none of that. You could like literally press a button and make it sound better, and you could also add music and sound effects that are royalty free. You might have, say you used Chris Brown's song or something like that, and they flagged like you could basically use stuff, and it's like license free. So I say that's definitely something that's worthwhile checking out. Uh, and these are pretty much the platforms. Like this was a podcast that I did a while back, but just say It's on a site called Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public. Let me go back. Radio Public and Spotify. So to be able to just incorporate that directly into, like directly into your podcast, like straight from your app, you know, it's, you know, I believe it's pretty much worthwhile, worth checking out because it's free. I don't know if you all have any podcasts. Like, is it on Apple Music or Spotify or any of those other platforms, or what? I don't know. And then I mean, that's pretty much it. So I would say, do you all have any questions? Because that's kind of the spiel. It kind of went quicker than I expected.
Well, this is Rodney. I'm back in the car, so I'm rolling and patrolling. But this was very. I would say this has been very important. I would have had questions, but you kind of laid everything out. And I can see the advantage of doing a monologue, you know.
Yeah,
And it seems like once you start getting fancy with like, a host and a co-host, you start running into the editing problems like the noise and things like that. Those are things I didn't think about, you
I
know.
mean, I
And
know
so,
you come from an audio background, so I don't think that would probably be an issue with you, though.
no, no, it wouldn't be an issue, but just in terms of producing one, so I already, because I used to do corporate video, so we address things pretty much the same way,
Yeah,
but just from the creative flow, so the audio part I get, it was just the way that you kind of compared to different scenarios that I thought was very, very useful, like a montage or a magazine could be really fancy,
yeah,
but there's issues. There's a lot of things. So from a planning and budgeting standpoint, um, this session was to really open my eyes and actually made me get more creative in terms of the types of podcasts I might want to produce for myself
yeah.
or partnership. Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. All right, that's what's up. Well, yeah, we'll definitely chop it up on that. Anybody else got any questions, or
I got a question.
All right.
Good presentation. I missed the first half because I was in a meeting, so I want to catch up with the rest of the stuff. But very informative. I had a question. What do you do about storage? When you record you might have covered this earlier, but when you
Uh,
finish recording
yeah.
a podcast or episode, do you have a cloud or do you save it on your desktop, Mac? I mean, what do you do with these
Yeah,
these
so
files?
I didn't get into it, but like the way I did it, like I did two podcasts, and the way I used to store the files, I would actually do everything in Pro Tools as far as like recording, So it would end up being a session, and then I would just kind of bounce it down, But I would definitely recommend getting an external hard drive to, save everything as well as putting it on the cloud. But
Mhm.
with something like Anchor, like that was another thing I didn't really get into with Anchor. Like, so the way we was able to do it, like the podcast, we did it in sections. So it was like we had, like I basically made two different what you call it, jingles, or three different jingles that would play in multiple places throughout the thing. And with Anchor, you could kind of, have, clip one, jingle one, and clip two, jingle two, and you could kind of maneuver them around. So I was actually able to, just make the individual files like that. And then like it wasn't, you could make it a wave or MP3. It's not a lot of, it's not taking up a lot of space. So the way I did it, I always would bounce it out in Pro Tools, because like I said, coming from the audio background, I would just treat it like a session, bounce whatever music I had out, and then okay, this is clip one. You know, which jingle do I want to pick? And then once I got to a certain point, I would just kind of start flipping the jingles around. And this was actually my second podcast because the first podcast was just straight audio. And then I'm like, I want to do, but yeah, I would say an external hard drive or like the cloud, you know.
Do you does YouTube charge any fees for uploading if you create a YouTube channel of your podcast? I mean, you upload the episodes, or is there like
No,
part of
they don't charge, but
Mhm.
I would say it's gonna take a while to monetize it. Like I would really recommend, I mean, use YouTube, but I would recommend using your external, using your own website and drive traffic there and really try to build your database from the connections and the resources that you have as far as like that's really what I'm getting into now. Like I'm gonna probably be sending you all emails. So y'all y'all in the list. You've been served. But I'm just saying like, really maximizing the connections and, making it valuable, to hit people up and, cuz like YouTube they're YouTube, so they don't really care. You're expendable. They'll kick you off like if you get a strike. So I would say really try to capture like that's really my problem working on a call to action. Like, it's like I'm doing this whole spiel. I have to work on a call to action for this. It's like I just presented you all with all this stuff and it's like now what? You know, just send y'all out to the wilderness. It's like, so it's like that's kind of, what you would have to, think about like when you have your show. And that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of this stuff I'm thinking about. I've done shows, but it's like the shows, say I've done a show with two people and we're not doing the show no more. That don't mean I'm not saying that I don't want to do a show. It's just that, so it kind of leads to where it's like, you got to kind of create the goals and set it up to whereas what'll make the show, like sustainable and what are your goals? Do you want it to sustain? Do you want 100 episodes or do you just want, like a couple episodes to be like, I got a podcast, because a lot of people follow fads, and not to get on my one guy, but I think, not think, DeSeuss and Mero, they had just started when me and my guy did my first podcast. And I'm like, we could be them. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, they don't like, and I don't know if y'all know who they are, but
Man,
they format was
those my boys, man.
that's what I'm saying. They format was similar to a podcast, but it's like you could kind of do something like that if you just like two dudes talking or two, women talking, or a male and a female talking, anybody talking and basically having a diverse conversation on a subject that's going to be engaging and going to capture somebody's attention. Like, people going to watch. And obviously, you could deal with the new age clickbait marketing to whereas you could like Vlad it and kind of take something that they said, not necessarily out of context, but you could take a quote and put it in the thing, especially if they say something extreme like I hate old people or something, and so now it, so now people gonna click on it like such and such says this, but it's just really thinking about marketing and really thinking about the end game with it because a lot of people, like I said, Joe Rogan just got 100 million, you know, and he just chilling. He was already straight. So picture he already had bread. So now he got 100 more million. Kind of like the Eddie Murphy joke. I can't remember it, but it's like, say he had 20 million. Now he got 120 million. You know what I'm saying? Just to talk. you know. And he's licensing because that's the whole thing with intellectual property. Like you have, it's just like we create content. So it's like you don't even have to be like a musician, or like you could just talk and people will listen. You know, like you could talk about the news, like, inauguration day, Biden's second day, Trump's first day out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people are actually tap into those various things. So you could just
But
kind of.
does Anchor have like uh license to the intellectual property? Like how does that work? Do you know?
I mean, I think you would have to. I think you would have to go consult with a lawyer for that one. But I would definitely say I know once you digitize whatever content you make, it has a digital timestamp. So, from what people were telling me, you're kind of covered then, but once it kind of deals with the copyright office, if it's a form of litigation, that's really where the copyright comes into play. So if I copyright your podcast and basically it's whoever own the copyright. That's kind of it, you know. So yeah, I would.
And, and when you're like thinking of like you said you've done already like two podcasts, right? So
Yeah.
looking back to, your early days of putting that out, like what are some of um the big mindset shifts you needed to do to kind of like push forward?
Uh, I mean, the problem that I would say I have with both of the podcasts that I did, I had a co-host, and nothing on them. They both still my guys to this day. Like, they're not like actively involved to where it's like I talk to them all the time. But it's just like, you know, as I was trying to grow it, they were, so, you know, I was really so the second one I started, like my buddy, I went to college with him and he was actually into media. He actually works for like NBC right now. That's actually why he left. Like he left like right before COVID hit. Like he literally left like when everything shut down like March 16th. He like left like March 8th or something. We was supposed to shoot an episode, but he had told me he had got the job. And like I can't, complain on him. But to answer your question though, like I really had big visions for the podcast cuz like I said, I didn't go to school for podcasting, but I went to school for, like music and like business and management. So I kind of understood the the sponsorship aspect of it and the advertising aspect of it. The fact that we could get people to donate stuff to us that we could just have sitting here, like I could, like they didn't donate me this guitar, right? So if I was talking about guitars, I could just have a guitar that, they donated just sitting here. And every like 10 minutes I would shout out, such and such guitars, you know? And that's really those were the takeaways I was getting because each time my podcast was gonna elevate, they jump ship. you know, like I'm in pre-production of a podcast. I'm actually in pre-production of like several podcasts, but you know, I'm really not. I won't even want to put that in the world, but I'm definitely not as passionate and pushing the podcast like that because I'm more passionate about teaching and trying to like, show people the stuff that I know, because it's like, nobody was like showing me none of this stuff, so it's like
I appreciate that.
I would love somebody like, like me to be like, hey, you want to know how to do a podcast or know how to like, do this or do that. So it's just like, I kind of got to a point to where it's like I still create music, but I'm not like pushing it. Like I got a song that I needed to put out before Trump left office, and now it's kind of just like you know, like so but that's besides the point. But I would say definitely just dealing with podcasts, like, and just really, teaching, the knowledge. Because I wanted to do a podcast. I mean, not, I wanted to do a webinar on podcast a while ago. Because, like I said, just coming from my background, like, I I like say my first mixtape or whatever that I did a while ago. I won't even say the time I did it, but just say the skits that we did. It was kind of like a podcast. Like I could have did it studio version, but we just kind of were talking like live. It wasn't like no 15 minutes. It was like 3 minutes. We acted like we was like on the block chilling. Like, me and my guy talking back and forth. It was pretty stupid, but I'm just saying like that's initially the same thing, So once you kind of do that, you're trying to balance in, the two voices. Because obviously, if you have two different microphones, you will be able to gain structure and set the input volumes to where they need to be. That's really the difference with having an audio interface and and investing in a bunch of equipment, because then you could like do those things if because obviously everybody voice isn't the same. Like a woman might be a woman is gonna sound lower than a man, so you might have to cut her up. So if you're trying to record two people on one microphone or one phone, and the space that it's apart, like all that matters, because it's like if I go back here versus me right here, you know what I'm saying, the impedance, and that's a whole nother level. But the way the microphone is picking up, the pattern is gonna pick up my voice because of that. The sound pressure levels are picking up perfect, like right here. And this is a dynamic mic, so I won't scream, but I could talk louder and louder, and it's not gonna necessarily distort. It'll sound obviously not good, but it won't like distort out. So the point is, I kind of forgot it, but I would just say, kind of concentrate on just I would say, well, I don't know. I would say concentrate on like making a good podcast, as far as like talking. If you're doing it mono, as far as like it's a monologue and it's just singular, that would be easy to do directly with Anchor. But when you got have multiple people, you gonna obviously need more things, and it's gonna, if you try to keep the one thing, is gonna bring in all the multiple the multiple problems that could arise. So I would say just kind of, I would say just do it. And if it sounds bad, put it out. you know. I mean, but if it sounds like terrible, try to fix it. But I would just say keep doing it, cuz my podcast, like they weren't. So I would say I did. So the first one, y'all could look them up. The first one was called Chicago Detox. I did how many episodes with my guy? I did 15 episodes with my guy, and then I did like 2 by myself. And a couple weren't even like, they're more they, and I don't even think all of the audio is on there. Those were kind of a visual one, and I probably put like about 8 or 9 of them on there, because by the time I started uploading them to Anchor, uh, you know, we weren't even doing the podcast no more. So my buddy that I did the second podcast with, which is probably inappropriate for this platform, but it was called The Real High News, and you could probably, it's kind of self-explanatory. So, but like that one, all the stuff that I wanted to do with the other one, I was doing in this one, as well as my buddy told me about Anchor, you know, and Anchor, you could make commercials for them, you know. That was one thing I wanted to get in. Like you could do spots for them, as far as like telling people to advertise. I mean, not advertise, but telling you're creating advertisement. That's why they doing it for free for you. You know what I'm saying? Like they basically get you to create a advertisement for Anchor, and they just throw it in your, in your thing. But at the end of the day, it's pretty dope. So yeah. I don't know.
Thank you so much for this information. I got to jump off, but I look forward to connecting with you.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna send a follow up email. I'm gonna upload the video and send y'all the slides. I'll be trying to do all that. I'm getting it together, but I'll be in touch and definitely thank
Okay.
you for coming. And
All
do
right.
anybody else got any questions? Cause I sit and I talk about this stuff all day. Y'all got any questions?
This is excellent. It's excellent. And looking forward to getting deeper into this podcasting thing.
All right, I told you we got to do one on the music production. You know?
Oh, and we were. Hey, listen, I'm even more ready now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and Alma, is that your name?
Yes.
So what's going on with the women empowerment? So are you ready to do the women empowerment podcast or
It's a direction I want to go to. Women empowerment, like motherhood and like the struggles. Because nobody talks about the struggle of being a mother. It's just all the fun and the good pictures and stuff. But like nobody talks about like postpartum and like all the struggles that happen with being a mom and just like life itself.
yeah, definitely. I mean, your voice needs to be heard, And like they say with the podcast, everybody has a voice. So when you gonna drop it? You can
I don't
download
know.
Anchor and just talking to it right now, and just kind of, I would say, just kind of you know, get the spiel, like as far as like what you just told me, as far as like it's kind of like a mission statement what you was just saying, but kind of just get that spiel into the format of like a show to where it's like now you're talking to people and figuring out how you could engage with people while it's going on. If like say you go live on Facebook or something or YouTube or whatever, and say you just talking to them, but you doing it and recording like the audio, or if you're like it, I mean it's endless opportunities, and then really dealing with getting guests because I'm sure obviously you know you can get other people to share their experiences. So that's why I say the podcast stuff is endless because people are consuming content endlessly. you know. So yeah, like I said, I definitely forward all of you all the slides and the video. I'll probably chop it up. It'll be quick.
Thank you.
It'll be quick. Most of the stuff I do is this is my first podcast. When most of the stuff I do is on like music production and like recording. So I kind of gotta like I usually like make a beat like live. Like say I go through my spiel. That's why I said this one kind of ended quick. I go through my spiel and then I start like making a beat from scratch. Like say I show you how to do all this stuff and then I like go in on a beat. And then like I would have to chop the video up and then to make it dope I would the beat that I would mix the beat that I was working on down and put it on the video. Y'all could check it out. You can follow the page. It's like I got a lot of content up there. Like I don't have a lot of followers and subscribers, but I don't really do it for that. But yeah, definitely appreciate y'all. And like I said, if
Oh,
you got any more questions,
Wesley,
definitely.
that's who because our business playing stuff together. But he did
What'd you say?
he
I
did
think
a
you gotta mute yourself, Rodney. I'm sure like but y'all don't have any more questions. All right, well, yeah, it's
Good
definitely good to
podcast,
see you,
man.
bro.
Proud of you. Thank you.
Definitely, we need to link up too. You got the leadership going. I see you.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I'm
definitely
saying?
trying to transition it to reaching more platforms and more folks, and not just locally. Trying to do it on a national level, making more access to it. So, trying to figure that out. This is the next phase.
We
So,
definitely connect, and I would say the podcast, just talking about that's it.
yeah,
Just talking about it and like getting people in those leadership roles and
mhm,
you know just
Yeah.
having those conversations, because people, right now that's like a hot topic, like, you know what I'm saying, the wealth, uh basically the wealth disproportion, like how, basically how, like, the wealth inequality,
Mhm.
social, basically everything. Like, now they having these conversations, but it's like, okay, like, we need more leaders. We
Mhm.
need more, like, scientists and doctors and lawyers, and, like, people that's like, we got enough musicians,
Entertainers and athletes.
and basketball players, athletes. So it's like,
Yeah.
like, we need to empower people to, and obviously you already know. So
Yeah.
I
You
won't
gotta
even
tell me.
get into that. So, like,
Yeah.
this wasn't the path that I started on. So it's just like, once you kind of see the light, you just kind of
But
push.
once you find your passion, man, that's the thing. Once you find your passion, that's why we're really proud of you. So, I think if we can make people believe that you don't gotta dribble a ball or throw a football or sing and dance, you got other ways to succeed,
Yeah,
and talking about that, and I think that there's a lot more opportunity for that. So, and you got a perfect testimony to that. So,
yeah,
people got to follow their passion and what they love and what they're good at, and there's a lot of things that outside of arts and in sports, there's a lot of things people could do, a lot of things people can do. So,
if they not exposed to it, that's really the thing, and that's really
exactly.
where I'm trying to come into play, as far as like with the organizations, and just
Mhm.
linking up with all the stuff here, because, like, obviously prior to COVID, like, we got center space here, like, all the Chicago shows, like, they shoot all those shows here, and, like, it's
Mhm.
right in the middle of the hood, like Chicago Fire, Chicago
100%.
Med, Empire, like all them shows,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
literally here. It's like, I won't say it's like the magnitude of Tyler Perry Studios, but it's like, it's
In there.
almost there. Like, they got NBC funding them, Dick Wolf with Law and Order, like, but it's so many jobs in there, and that's really what I'm trying to create, like, teaching people, all of these aspects,
Hmm.
and, setting up the workforce development, as well as, schooling them on the intellectual property, because if they working on this big project, they just gonna be a work for hire. So at the end of the day, if they don't understand that, oh, I could just make a podcast, and, you could check a bag off a podcast,
Yeah.
you could just,
Diaz and Merles. Yeah, you're right. Joe Rogan. Those are all good examples. And this is good, man. This is a good thing because I wouldn't have known how to start. You know, I like you said, we all got to teach everybody. Each one teach one. So whatever you want to share with the world. So who no one's going to teach us how to do podcasts, how to use music, Pro Tools, and all these things. So this was good, man. This is really good. I appreciate you, bro.
yeah, it's
So
all good, no problem.
I'm gonna tune off. I'm gonna check with you later. Okay.
All right, cool.
Take care.
All right, yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. So yeah, y'all don't got no more questions. I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing that woman empowerment podcast, and definitely just think of a catchy name, and have a nice logo. That's more dealing with the marketing, but that's pretty much that's it. Like, that's what you need, you know.
Yeah, thank you for this as well. I'm looking forward for your emails as well.
All right, I got you. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right, Rodney. I think that's about it. I ain't even get into my main spiel. You still there? Well, yeah, I'm gonna close this one out. I kind of did it wrong because I sure was supposed to plug everything. But if y'all watch the video on the playback, y'all will definitely see uh if this was brought to you by Chicago Artistic Alliance. Pretty much that's the breakdown of the mission. deliver arts awareness in urban communities. Our target focus groups are low to moderate income youth, ages 10 to 18 years of age. We offer workshops, mentoring, youth outreach, and DIY training. This concept is to help them develop a professional portfolio as well as work with professionals in the industry and their peers. We are passionate about this because we create these programs to provide a positive environment of expression and outlet for discovery for these kids. Like, seriously, because it's definitely needed, you know. And it was also brought to you by Railroad Tracks Music Academy. And Railroad Tracks Music Academy's mission is to raise the standards of musicianship and entrepreneurship in these urban communities through professional development and higher music education. And our target focus group is those in low to moderate income levels. And we also offer mentoring workshops, DIY training, and workforce development. And we prioritize those in underprivileged and underserved. All right. And like I said, you can find out more information at railroadtracksmusicacademy.org and railroadtracksmusic.com if you're looking to find out what music I'm working on. And you can also find out more at chicagoartisticalliance.org. And there go both of those for you, chicagoartisticalliance.org and railroadtracksmusicacademy.org. And like I said, if you want to get in contact with me, my name is Wesley Rogers. Like I said, I'm the owner of Railroad Tracks Music Incorporated, and we're a music production and sound design company based out of Chicago. That's my contact info. It's been real. Thank y'all for joining. Thanks for coming out. God bless. Good night.